Hi, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here, and thank you, Rabbi Blake, for the warm words. This week, we begin reading the book of Leviticus, a book filled with detailed descriptions of animal sacrifices, which are challenging for modern-day readers. During these difficult times of pain and suffering, texts receive new meaning. A talk about sacrifices brings to mind the many people who sacrificed their lives since October 7th to protect Israel, and the numerous who have given their time and put so much effort to help those in need. Yet within the same pages of the book of Leviticus also lies a powerful and enduring principle, Ve'ahavta lereacha kamocha, love your neighbor as yourself. The command to love the other as we love ourselves guides Reform Judaism and is the shining light which also guides our work at the Israel Religious Action Center. For years, we have championed equality and justice for all Israelis, combating the discrimination based on race, religion, and gender. This fight is even more critical during these times of grave crisis and heightened hostilities. Here are some of the struggles we have been engaged in over the past years. Our fight for equality to the liberal streams in Israel brought about the beginning of the dismantling of the Orthodox monopoly, proving there is more than one way to be Jewish in the Jewish state. Our conversions have been recognized. Some of our congregations and rabbis now receive public funding. Our pluralistic Jewish education programs are supported by the state. We are still fighting for an equal and respectable place at the Western Wall for all Jews. We fight against exclusion of women and against gender segregation in the public sphere. Thanks to Iraq, bus drivers in Israel are no longer allowed to send women to the back of the bus, and flight attendants cannot ask women to switch seats just because a male passenger refuses to sit next to them. Modesty signs, such as the ones that are hung in religious neighborhoods, are now illegal, and burial societies are no longer allowed to prevent women from eulogizing their loved ones or to force gender segregation on the grieving family. We fight against silencing women's voices. We won a class action suit against a radio station which did not allow women to be heard on air, and the station was ordered to pay 1 million shekels in damages. We also fight against the vandalizing and censoring of images of women in the public sphere because women should be given an equal place everywhere. Yesterday, we marked the International Day for the Elimination of Racism. One of our main issues is fighting all forms of racism, especially those that attempt to justify prejudice using Jewish texts. We say out loud that racism is not our Judaism. After long legal struggles, the Israeli Supreme Court declared that Orthodox leaders and rabbis who incite to racism should face criminal and disciplinary charges. Thanks to us, racist candidates were disqualified from running to the Israeli parliament, the Knesset, for the first time in 30 years. We established a racism crisis center which offers advice and legal aid for victims of racial profiling and for people who were refused service because of their race. We take to court people who discriminate others. One example is our class action suit against Get, which is the Israeli Uber, which offered a Mehadrin cab service, seemingly cabs which do not drive on Shabbat, but in fact a Jewish-only cab driver's service. As a result of our suit, this racist service ceased to exist a few months ago, and the company will pay damages to 2,000 Palestinian cab drivers from East Jerusalem. We also offer a counter-vision to the extremist and racist perceptions some wish to promote, and we offer a vision of tolerance and of a shared society between Jews and Arabs. Just yesterday, we held a big conference in Israel, which offered the vision of a shared society and which offered our congregations around Israel specific tools and programs to promote shared society between Jews and Arabs, which is especially important during this time. We also assist the LGBTQ community, fighting discrimination and demanding equality. Our legal action has recently led to the abolishing of discriminatory practice whereby gay couples were denied adoption rights. And now gay couples are entitled to adopt kids in Israel, the same as heterosexual couples. Our legal aid center for Olim, for new immigrants, assists thousands of new immigrants each year. And in the last 2 years, we have assisted many new immigrants from Ukraine and Russia fleeing the war there, such as a 14-year-old girl who is a great-grandchild of a Jew and was not allowed to leave war-torn Ukraine until we helped her, and she was united with her parents and brother in Israel. We also assist dozens of foreign women who are victims of domestic violence and face deportation after leaving their abusive husbands, Israeli husbands. Thanks to our work, many of them have been allowed to stay in Israel despite leaving their husbands. Our work has become more urgent and important since the establishment of the most extremist, racist, homophobic, and misogynistic government Israel has ever had in December of 22. A government which from its inception tried to push dozens of dangerous initiatives. The new government threatened Israel's democracy, attempting to pursue a judicial coup, a series of legislative changes proposed in 2023 that aimed to overhaul the judicial system. These changes would have given the government that already controls the Israeli parliament control over the nomination of judges and would have prevented the Israeli Supreme Court from striking down illegal governmental decisions and unconstitutional laws, thus leaving minorities such as Reform Jews, women, LGBTQ, and Israeli Palestinians with no protection from state discrimination. Luckily, the Israeli public refused to accept this and flooded the streets for 40 weeks straight in an unprecedented pro-democracy protest. The Israeli reform movement joined the protest from the very first day under the slogan, as we saw, defending democracy in the name of Judaism, because what the government attempted to do was neither democratic nor Jewish. We offered a humanistic Jewish alternative to the extremist and racist version of Judaism that the Israeli government presented. The hundreds of thousands of Israelis who voiced their opposition to the dangerous initiatives of the government were joined by many liberal Jews outside of Israel who stood up for Israel's democracy. The protests made a difference. The judicial coup was prevented. The only component of the legislative proposals, which was ultimately enacted by the Knesset, a law preventing the Supreme Court from intervening in unreasonable government decisions, was struck down by the Supreme Court 3 months ago. The first 9 months of 2023 were challenging, but it was also uplifting to see the awakening of the Israeli liberal public, who for the first time stood up for the values we have been promoting for years. And then came the horrible events of October 7th. For the first few weeks, I, like many Israelis, volunteered, made food for soldiers, collected toys and clothes for displaced families, donated blood. During those first few days, when the atrocities were unfolding, 2 sources of light were shining in the general darkness that descended and engulfed us. First, the strength and resilience of Israeli society, and the willingness of everyone around us to give a hand. All of the government ministries failed to properly respond to the catastrophe, but Israel was saved by our civil society, which rose up to the task. And second, the love and support from Jews all over the world, which was heartwarming and kept me going through these hard times. The Israeli Reform Movement assisted many people through our humanitarian relief fund, Keren Bekavod, recruiting volunteers and distributing supplies. Our rabbis offered pastoral care to many who were in need of comfort and consolation, bereaved families and families of people who were wounded or taken hostage. We held and are still holding solidarity events with the hostage families. Every Shabbat, we conduct Havdalah services at the square in Tel Aviv, where the families of the hostages kidnapped to Gaza gather, like we heard from Kendra Amanda. We dealt with the increasing racism toward Israeli Arabs as a result of the war, and monitored the national budget to demand that the government address the urgent needs of those who suffered due to the war, instead of sectorial needs of the ultra-Orthodox parties who control the coalition government. We know that you have gone through a very difficult period too, both because of a grave concern regarding what is happening in Israel, and also because of the growing anti-Semitism here in the United States. As I mentioned, the book of Leviticus contains elaborate rules dealing with animal sacrifice. In the Agadic text Avot de Rabbi Natan, it was said that while visiting the ruins of the Second Temple, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai tried to comfort his students who were concerned that now that the temple was gone, they would not be able to atone for their sins. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai told his students, "We have a means of atonement that is equal to sacrifice. It is doing of kind deeds." The American educator Faye Tillis wrote that the opening portion of Leviticus teaches us that our actions are important. The Hebrew word for sacrifice, korban, shares its root with the Hebrew verb to draw near, leitkarev. We can therefore draw near God by doing kind deeds. Assisting other people is a method of giving peace offerings, making us complete, creating a sense of wholeness within our families and communities. As we heard, this Shabbat is Shabbat Zachor, when we are ordered to remember what Amalek did to us. However, we don't need to look for far to find catastrophe, but I think that instead of looking back in despair, we have to choose to look forward with hope. In these dark times, we must act according to the verse, "Love thy neighbor as yourself." Our vision for a democratic Israel, which is the homeland of all Jews, and which treat all its citizens equally, is more important now than ever. Despite the darkness that surrounds us, we know that we shall overcome this moment through the amazing energies of people in Israel and of liberal Jews around the world. We will continue to fight for a just Israel, and we will continue to hope for better days, days of peace and quiet. Knowing that you are with us in this struggle is what keeps us going. Shabbat Shalom.